We have a new Mission Impossible movie, so today I'll be ranking all 7 movies from one of my favorite franchises from the worst to the best. And remember, this is only my opinion, so be sure to leave your own list down below. And also consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video. In last place we have Mission Impossible 2. A proper early 2000s movie, if I've ever seen one, from the weird choice of music to the cheesy elements. This movie is nowhere near the level of the others. A big reason for this is the plot they decide to go with, which just feels so uninteresting. Maybe it's because the main plot revolved around this pointless romance that goes absolutely nowhere at all. It also feels so overly dramatic at times, it's hard to not be amused. But speaking of the plot, they also overuse the masked plot twist so many times in this movie, it loses all believability. And compared to most of the movies on this list, it doesn't have any standout heist or action scene that feels memorable or unique. Then we have Mission Impossible 3, definitely a big improvement over the second film, but it's still pretty clear the franchise hasn't fully found its footing yet. There are definitely more elements in this movie that inspired the later films than MI2 has, for example, but it still feels pretty detached. The whole vibe of the movie is definitely much darker than the other movies, tonally but also visually. There are some great action scenes in this film and cool heists, but compared to the others it doesn't really have one standout sequence, and for after runtime it feels more like a generic action movie. The villain here is definitely one of the best in the franchise, and from the opening scene you just want to see this character defeated. The tone is also super intense at times, so it is a solid movie that can be a lot of fun to watch. At number 5 we have the original Mission Impossible. A really good movie and a great introduction to this franchise on the big screen. While it is quite a lot different than the newer movies, mainly due to the lack of action scenes, it always feels intriguing. Like Ethan never fires a gun in this movie, but due to the mysteries, twists and heists, it's really engaging. What really stood out to me on this rewatch was the attention to detail. A lot of them you wouldn't spot during the first watch. Everything that happens has some sort of clue hidden in the film previously, and that is really cool to see. It also just nails the tense moments, the stand-up being the main heist, which is still the best heist in the franchise. The way it uses sound, or more specifically, the lack thereof, combined with great directing, just creates such a suspenseful sequence. So a great movie, and we are still in the bottom half of this list.
I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Then we have Rogue Nation, another great entry in the franchise that has some awesome scenes and stunts. What I'm gonna say about this movie is probably gonna be very similar to what I say about the others. The reason this one is lower is I think it loses a bit of steam after the bike chase. So the end is kind of underwhelming, but everything else is really good. In particular, the underwater heist, which is directed in such a way where you constantly feel the danger and urgency. Another big standout is the opening scene with the plane stunt, which is a great opening to a film. And looking at all the good elements, it's pretty unfortunate the ending doesn't fully live up to it. But it doesn't really take away from my enjoyment of the film at all, and this is a very consistent franchise, so something had to go lower down. Up next is Ghost Protocol. This movie can be summed up in one word, Dubai. The Dubai sequence is probably the best scene in the entire franchise, and one that is filled with so much tension and the sense of dread. And what made it even better is that Tom Cruise did this for real, with more safety measures of course, but still. Even though this is the standout sequence, the rest of the movie is just as good. In particular the Kremlin scene, which is also a very cool sequence. The cast here is also great, Benji being a highlight as always, but we also get the introduction of Jeremy Renner's character. Too bad Luther wasn't in it though, but still an awesome film. In second place we have Fallout, one of the action movies I've watched the most, and how cool is it that still after 6 movies, the franchise still gets better and better. This film is a non-stop ride of action scenes and stunts. The cast is as good as ever, and you get probably the best villain in the franchise, played by Henry Cavill. And again, like always, it has so many memorable moments. A few of the other movies, namely Protocol and Rogue Nation, felt a bit underwhelming near the end. This one however ends with its best sequence, being that awesome helicopter chase. It also does a good job of tying in plot points from the previous films, as these movies are generally pretty separated story-wise, so it's really a culmination of everything that has come before. But in first place we have Dead Reckoning Part 1. This movie is incredible, and easily one of the best movies of the year so far. And it's amazing that this franchise still produces great movies, 7 films in already. The plot they decide to go with is definitely the most intriguing of the entire franchise, as it's literally Ethan going up against AI, which is something different in the franchise. They also show just how terrifying artificial intelligence can be, and therefore there's always intrigue and tension. It's also such a cleverly crafted script with so many twists and mysteries that keeps the viewer engaged. And obviously it's a Tom Cruise movie, so there's some awesome action and stunts. The big one that's been hyped up for so long before the movie's release is just as good as you think it's gonna be. But other than that, there are also so many other great sequences. Sword fights, car chases, fighting on top of trains, all of them being very memorable. The new characters are also great, as well as seeing the old team again. And even though it is a part 1, it never feels like just a setup movie. So at this moment, it's probably one of my favorite action movies of all time, so it is a must watch.